Okay, I'll give 2 more minutes, and whoever arrives, and that's it. One-minute warning. As soon as Michael Freifeld is on a phone call, as soon as he comes back, I'll start. Somebody new. I guess we can start. I don't know, he may be on a long call.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out for our sparkling presentation that's going to be led by Dr. Eric Steckler. It's a pleasure to have him here. He always brings such wonderful, wonderful programs and topics, and he was already talking to me about a couple potential topics for his upcoming research for next year as well. So let's give him a hand, welcome him.
Okay. Let's go.
And take it away.
Okay. It's all about the carbon atoms. Depending on how they're arranged, carbon can be either one of the softest substances, graphite, or the hardest known substance, diamonds, which has strong bonds in all directions as opposed to weak bonds between layers. The basic structure of a gem quality diamond is called an octahedron. It's sort of like two pyramids stuck together, but they come in all sizes and shapes. If you have nitrogen impurities, you'll get a yellow or brownish diamond. If you have boron impurities, you get a blue diamond. Diamonds formed 1 to 3 billion years ago under extremes of heat and pressure. Whoops. There it is. And most diamonds were formed under a continental crust about over 62 miles down. But some of the biggest, clearest diamonds were formed 250 to 400 miles down in the Earth's mantle. Both were brought to the surface by volcanic eruptions. Diamonds were actually rare in ancient Greece and Rome. Only rough diamonds were used because they didn't know how to polish or to cut diamonds. They knew that the diamonds came from the east somewhere, but a lot of legends grew up about the diamonds. One is the Valley of Gems, where you had serpents guarding diamonds in an inaccessible valley, that nearby natives would actually throw meat into the valley, and the diamonds would adhere to it, birds would eat the diamonds, and then people would capture the birds in their nests. The first mention of Jews in history is in the 11th century Cairo with the Tustari brothers. They were influential merchants as well as diamond and gem traders. They were Karaites who only believed in the Torah but not the Talmud. David ben Maimon was Moses Maimonides' younger brother. And in 1177, he was on a ship leaving from the Red Sea going to India to trade for diamonds. Unfortunately, his ship sank and he drowned, leaving a widow and young daughter. And it was only at that time that Moses Maimonides actually had to work as a physician, because before that, his brother was supporting him in all his intellectual endeavors. There were also caravans from India that brought diamonds to Aleppo, Syria, along the Mediterranean coast, where Jewish merchants would trade for the diamonds. Both from Aleppo and from Cairo, diamonds made their way to Venice, the great trading cosmopolitan emporium on the Adriatic Sea. And in the 1300s, we first find the beginnings of polishing diamonds. And in 1407, we know of a Jewish diamond cutter in Venice. The diamonds that reached the West were actually the leftovers from India. The kings and emperors of India had the first choice of diamonds, and because for them it symbolized eternity and victory. Here's the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which means mountain of light in Persian. It was first attested to in 14th century India, changed hands a number of times between India and Persia. And in 1849, it was given to Queen Victoria. Well, her husband, Prince Albert, didn't like the way the Indians cut the diamonds. He wanted to bring it up to European standards. And so he sent it to Amsterdam, where it was cut by two Jewish diamond workers, Meji Koster and Levi Benjamin Vorzanger. And it's now in one of the imperial crowns, but only worn by women. Apparently, it's bad luck if a man wore it. From Venice, the diamonds would go by either overland or by sea to Bruges, which was the northern counterpart of Venice. In the Middle Ages, diamonds were actually not that popular because it was very difficult to cut, so they didn't have a whole lot of sparkle. Rubies and emeralds were much more valuable then. But by 1500, the waterways around Bruges began to silt up. So the great commercial center in the north moved from Bruges to Antwerp. In 1456, Ludwig von Becken invented what's called the scaife. It's a polishing wheel which was coated with olive oil and diamond dust. Diamonds actually are attracted to oil but repelled by water. And the diamonds would be put in these little lead containers held at a certain angle, and then you're able to polish into facets, which are smooth areas at a certain angle. The diamond dust was made by a very laborious process called bruting, where you would rub two diamonds together to get the dust. Jews were known as master jewelers in medieval Spain. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella expelled the Jews from Spain. Those who did not convert either moved to North Africa, the Ottoman Empire, or to Portugal. But in 1497, the King of Portugal forcibly converted all the Jews to Catholicism. But in 1536, the Inquisition started in Portugal. And many Jews, including crypto-Jews or conversos, moved to Antwerp because the Inquisition was less pervasive there. In 1510, the Portuguese conquered Goa here on the west coast of India. And among the things that they traded for were diamonds with Indian intermediaries. Most of the traders who dealt with diamonds were conversos, who would then send the diamonds to family members in Lisbon, and from there to be cut by the conversos in Antwerp. The diamonds came from a district over here called Golconda, and they were found in alluvial or riverbed deposits. About 30,000 Indian workers worked these mines, some as deep as 24 feet. In 1576, the Spanish army of Flanders sacked the city of Antwerp and massacred thousands over a pay dispute. And this led to the decline of Antwerp as many Gentiles and crypto-Jews moved to more tolerant Amsterdam. In fact, in 1602, Jews were allowed to openly practice their religion. And throughout the 1600s, many crypto-Jews or conversos moved to Amsterdam and became openly Jewish, jump-starting the diamond trade in Amsterdam. If you look close, here's a scape or polishing wheel for diamonds. The wheels are turned by women. Sometimes horses were also used. Here's Manasseh ben Israel. He was a rabbi in Amsterdam of Portuguese descent. And in 1650, he wrote a book called The Hope of Israel, which basically stated that the Messiah will come when all the countries in the world have Jewish inhabitants. Well, England expelled their Jews in 1290. So in about 1655, he went to London. And he was important in getting Oliver Cromwell to admit the Jews in 1656. And over time, a Sephardic Jewish community grew up in the eastern part of London, centered on the Bevis Marks Synagogue. And we were there in August, and truthfully, it looks about the same. In 1600, In 1600, the English East India Company was formed, and in 1602, the Dutch East India Company was formed. And they competed for trade along the cities of India, including diamonds. and Dutch Amsterdam Sephardic Jews would send their younger relatives to deal with diamonds. However, by about 1700, the English had won, and the center of the diamond trade focused on Madras with its Fort St. George. And here's a map of Madras and Fort St. George. Right here is actually the Jewish cemetery, and right next to it is the synagogue, which was built in 1644 by a Sephardic Jew from Amsterdam, Jaime de Pavia. 1700s was the heyday of Sephardic Jews from London and the diamond trade in India. The East India Company had a monopoly on textiles and spices, but individuals were allowed to trade for diamonds. And here is the license for Joseph Salvador to trade in diamonds. He was a Sephardic Jew. His family came from Holland. He was a businessman and a leader of the Jewish community and the Bevis Mark Synagogue, and he actually was a fellow of the Royal Society of England. Later in the 1700s, Ashkenazi Jews in London also started getting into the diamond trade. And here is the tomb in India of Leon Prega. He was a relative and an employee of the Ashkenazi Solomon family business. What did they trade for to get diamonds? Well, one important material was red coral from the Mediterranean, and which was made into either beads or jewelry for trading purposes. In 1591, Fernando, who was Grand Duke of Tuscany, decided to make the then small town of Livorno into a free trade area. He actually invited Jews to settle there with essentially no restrictions. And in time, about 3,000 Jews settled there. This is the same time where in his capital of Florence, Jews had been ghettoized since 1570. They built a magnificent synagogue in Livorno, which unfortunately was destroyed by Allied bombing in World War II. So fishermen would harvest the red coral in the Mediterranean, bring it to Livorno, where Sephardic merchants, like here Moses Baruch Carvaglio, would buy the catch, and in their workshops would make it into jewelry and beads, and then send it off to Sephardic merchants in London. Ashkenazi Jews, actually using Gentile intermediaries in Lisbon, purchased New World silver to trade in India for diamonds. From 1600 to about 1750 was the Baroque period in Europe, a time of a great deal of ostentation and glitter, and the Jewish diamond cutters rose to the occasion, and they came up with new types of cuts of diamonds with more facets, such as this type of table cut here, and most popular, the rose cut, which you see in these pieces of jewelry. Where did the diamonds go to? Well, much of it actually went to Germany, where there were about 300 different principalities, both large and small, and their rulers liked to have their diamonds and glitter. Many of them had court Jews, like Rabbi Samson Wertheimer here. They were wealthy Jews who gave loans and credit to their rulers, financial advisors, military suppliers, diplomats, and as you see here, they acquired jewelry. So the way things work with diamonds would go from India to London, from London to Amsterdam, cut into gems, and from there it would go to Hamburg, Germany, where Ashkenazi and Sephardic diamond brokers would eventually get it to the court Jews. One of the most famous in that business was Gluckel of Hamelin, who lived from 1646 to 1724. She was a German Jewish businesswoman who was famous because she had a diary in Yiddish, which she kept for 30 years. She lived in Hamburg. Her father was a successful diamond merchant, and she also dealt with diamonds and pearls. She actually married at age 14, had 14 kids, 13 unusually survived to adulthood. So she had lots of descendants, including here Bertha Pappenheim, who was an Austrian feminist, educator, and writer who's dressed up in a costume like Gluckel would have in basically about 1700. In 1729, diamonds were discovered along alluvial or riverbank deposits in the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais, which is north of Rio de Janeiro. These mines were worked by African slaves. The Portuguese had a monopoly on diamonds, and they had Jewish diamond merchants from Amsterdam would buy the whole lot. And later, when Brazil became independent in 1822, the same Jewish diamond merchants would deal directly with the Brazilian government. So many diamonds were found that the price of diamonds fell about 50%, but that actually just stimulated demand for diamonds. In 1867, a 15-year-old boy, Erasmus Jacobs, along the Orange River over here, found what turned out to be the first diamond in South Africa. After it was cut, it's been called the Eureka diamond, and it's actually in South Africa Museum now. Shortly thereafter, other diamonds were found along the riverbeds of the Vaal River. But shortly after that, on nearby farms, two of the most famous ones are Kimberley and De Beers, in a type of rock which was later called kimberlite, diamonds in much greater concentration were found. And that started a diamond rush to the diamond fields. And people would trek about 700 miles from Cape Town to stake their claims in the diamond fields. Very few Jews were actually diggers for mines, but particularly in Cape Town, they were merchants with European connections, and they actually supplied the food and equipment that you see here for the diamonds, and very shortly got into the buying and selling of diamonds right in the fields. By the early 1870s, Jewish merchant houses from London also got into the diamond business, which is to see just got much more sophisticated. And this was taking place in Kimberley, which by this time was a boomtown of about 30,000 people. There were also auctions for diamonds run by Jews in Cape Town. But with the Jewish involvement so extensively in diamonds, anti-Semitism was not far behind. By the, back again. Sorry about that. By the late 1870s, so many diamonds were produced and sent to Europe that the price fell a great deal. But the problem was the owners of these plots needed more and more equipment to mine the diamonds or break up the rocks where the diamonds were, and that was very expensive, so many wanted to sell. And this left an opening for risk-taking entrepreneurs to make a fortune, many of whom, in fact, the majority of whom were Jews. One who was not was Cecil Rhodes, who was born in England. He came to South Africa in the early 1870s, where he had a contract to pump water out of the mines, but he also started buying up a lot of these diamond claims and formed a company, De Beers Mining Company. He was assisted by a German Jew, Alfred Beit, who also came to South Africa and was instrumental in financing for the company, and he became a friend and also life governor of the corporation. His rivals were one, Jules or Yehuda Porges, who was born in Vienna, lived in Prague, moved into Paris where he was a diamond trader, and then went to South Africa where he formed the French Diamond Company. He went into partnership with Barney Bernato here, forming the Kimberley Central Mining Company. Barney Bernato was born Barnett Isaacs in London. He was actually a music hall entertainer and prize fighter before he went to South Africa. In 1888, Cecil Rhodes bought out Barney Bernato and Porges to form De Beers Consolidated Mining Company. I wouldn't feel sorry for Barney Bernato because he became the largest shareholder in the company and very rich. And so by 1888, the De Beers controlled about 95% of the diamonds in South Africa. His financing actually came for the company, for the takeover, from Nathan Rothschild, who was the first Baron Rothschild. He was a British banker, philanthropist, and politician. He was the great-grandson of Meyer Amschel Rothschild, who was the first member of the dynasty. Cecil Rhodes never married, and it was Nathan Rothschild who actually set up the Rhodes Scholarship to Oxford. In 1889, 10 diamond merchant companies came together to form the London Diamond Syndicate. All 10 firms were Jewish and interconnected by marriage and family ties, and the owners had all worked in the diamond fields in South Africa. So De Beers extended their diamond holdings throughout South Africa, in part due to the work of Emil Cohen, who was a German Jewish geologist, and he was the first to offer a volcanic explanation for the diamond pipes where the diamonds were found. One of the mines acquired by De Beers was up in Cullinan, near Pretoria and Johannesburg, and in 1905, the largest gem-quality rough diamond ever found was discovered, 3,106 carats, which is basically 1.5 pounds of pure diamond. It was given by the South African government to King Edward VII of England, and in 1908, he sent it to Amsterdam to be cut by Joseph Asher, who was an unrivaled diamond cutter, and in fact, in 1902, he came up with the first patented diamond cut called the Asher cut, which is still used today. He cut it into 9 different gem quality stones. The largest was 530 carats. It's in the sovereign scepter of England. The second was 317 carats, is in the imperial crown. The other 7 are in the private holdings of the royal family. So many diamonds were found and mined in South Africa that in Amsterdam, diamond cutting went from a cottage industry to big business with steam-powered scapes. 2 of the companies, Jewish-owned companies, are still in existence, and you saw some of the people involved. One is the Koster Diamond Company, and the other is the Asher Diamond Company. They were financed by Jewish investment bankers. One was owned by Abraham Kuro Wertheim, who was actually leader of the community. Christian investment bankers had thought the diamond business was too risky and stayed away. The diamond business was boom or bust. If too many diamonds were produced, the London Diamond Syndicate would just not send diamonds to Amsterdam, and putting people out of business. In 1894, Christian diamond cutters, who tended to work with smaller stones, went on strike for better wages and working conditions, and then Jewish diamond workers joined in. They actually won the strike, and in 1894, Henry Pollock, who came from a diamond cutter family, formed the General Dutch Diamond Workers Union. What was unusual about it is that it was religiously neutral, with both Jews and Christians involved, which was not the norm either in America or in Europe at that time. Henry Pollock was a socialist, but he knew his bread and butter was with the diamond industry. But for him, it was very important that his union members got increased education and culture. And there were many lectures in the beautiful union building. And about 50% of Jews in Amsterdam, one way or another, were connected to the diamond industry. And it was the diamond business which gave the rise of Jews from being a proletariat community to a middle-class community. But actually, the union was too successful because many of the Jewish diamond merchants moved to Antwerp because of the union was weaker and there were lower costs. And in fact, about 90% of the merchants in Antwerp were Jews. About 20% of the diamond cutters were Jews. The great majority were Orthodox Jews who came by the Red Star Line to Antwerp from Russia and Poland. And by 1920, Antwerp had superseded Amsterdam as the main diamond center in the world. Here is Marcel Tokowski. He was a Belgian Jew from a family of diamond cutters from Poland. And in 1990, he was an engineer, and in his PhD thesis was to find the most perfect diamond, which the most sparkle and fire. And he came up what's now known as the Tokowski Round Brilliant, which is probably the most common diamond that's used in diamond engagement rings. It had 58 facets, 33 above the line here called the girdle, and 25 below. Here's Ernest Oppenheimer. He was born in Germany, but in 1897, at the age of 17, he moved to London to work for one of the Jewish merchant diamond houses, Dunkelbühlers. And in 1902, when he was 22, he was sent as a buyer to South Africa. Well, he was a very smart and shrewd and ambitious guy, and during World War I, in 1917, he saw that German diamond mine owners in the German colony of Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia, wanted to sell because they figured if Germany lost the war, they would lose everything. So he formed the Anglo-American Corporation with financing from J.P. Morgan, bought them out, parlayed that into a seat on the De Beers board, and by 1929, he was chairman of the corporation. In 1930, he formed the Central Selling Organization in London, and now De Beers controlled everything from mining to wholesaling of about 95% of the diamonds in the world. They set up shop in Hatton Gardens in the northern part of London, and in their very well-guarded vaults had billions of dollars worth of diamonds, because Oppenheimer's motto was to make sure that demand is higher than the supply. He died in 1957, and he was succeeded by his son, Harry Oppenheimer, who ended up being one of the richest men in the world, because besides diamonds, he had interests and assets in platinum and in gold. He was also a big opponent of apartheid in South Africa. In 1940, about 80% of the diamonds business was in Antwerp, about 20% was in Amsterdam. And in 1940, the Germans invaded the Low Countries. In Antwerp, many in the diamond business fled ahead of the Nazis, but others remained. And for the next 2 years, from 1940 to 1942, Germans tried to confiscate as many diamonds as they could in Antwerp because it was useful for foreign currency and for industrial purposes. However, after they got as many as they can, they sent the diamond workers and cutters into the gas chambers, and only about 5% survived the war. However, after the war, Harry Oppenheimer was instrumental in revitalizing the Antwerp diamond business. Same thing happened in Amsterdam, except that at one point in Bergen-Belsen, the Germans were thinking of starting a diamond business in the concentration camp. They thought better of it, and all the Jews were sent to the gas chambers. But of those who fled the Low Countries, they started diamond business during the war in Havana, Cuba, and also in Tel Aviv. And De Beers and the Oppenheimers saw, well, during the war, there wasn't much call for diamond jewelry. So they pulverized a lot of their diamonds and sold it to America, where it was used to make precision tooling equipment. In the 1890s, due to changes in the tax laws and the fact that by then America was the biggest consumer of diamonds, Jewish merchants from Amsterdam started a small diamond business on Maiden Lane, which is right near the financial area in lower Manhattan. And here's the first diamond trading center in America. And here's what Maiden Lane looked like at that time. But by the late 1920s to early 1930s, due to rising rents in this area, the Diamond Center moved to up a little further in lower Manhattan to Canal and the Bowery. But, there we go, whoops. But in 1941, again, due to rising rents, the diamond business moved further north to be 47th Street between 6th and 5th Avenue. Why? Because during the Depression, there was a lot of empty office space there, so rents were very low. And refugees in the diamond business, from mainly Orthodox, from Amsterdam and Antwerp, came there from 1941, and then again after the war, setting up to today's Diamond District. And you can see there's the lamppost has diamond-shaped lights. About 90% of diamonds in the U.S. comes from the New York City Diamond District. There's about 4,000 businesses there, wholesalers, retailers, as well as jewelry stores. About $400 million worth of transactions are done every day in the New York City Diamond District. Here's the slogan for the Diamond Dealers Club, which has about 2,000 members. And the Diamond District is very unusual. It's basically based on trust, because you can have millions of dollars worth of transactions with just even inside a building or on the streets with just a handshake and the mazel and bracha to close the deal. However, if the Diamond Dealers Club monitors behavior, and if it was found that somebody cheated on a transaction or didn't follow through, they'd never get another deal again. And many being very orthodox, they would be ostracized in their synagogue. Here's the International Diamond Tower on 47th Street. It was built in 2013. It's 34 stories, but the lower 20 floors are for the diamond industry. It has great natural lighting, state-of-the-art security, and U.S. and foreign free trade zones. The lower three floors are occupied with the Gemological Institute of America, which is the leading business for evaluating diamonds for either color, cut, clarity, as well as carats. A carat is equal to 0.2 grams, which is the size of a carob seed. Carats are a small c for diamonds and a small k for gold. In 1476, Mary of Burgundy became engaged to Archduke Maximilian of the Habsburg dynasty, and he gave her the first diamond engagement ring. And it actually pissed off the future king of France, Charles VIII, because he wanted all the Burgundy lands, and it led to about 200 years of enmity between the Habsburgs and the French crown. Another innovation later on was in the late 1800s was diamond rings could be bought on credit. But by 1938, during the Depression, sales of diamonds were way down. Only 10% of engagements were accompanied by a diamond engagement ring. So the Oppenheiers contracted with N.W. Ayers advertising company in Philadelphia to increase sales, and they made sure diamonds were seen in women's magazines with actors and in movies. But the big break actually came in 1948 when Mary Frances Garrity, who was one of the few women in advertising at that time, came up with the slogan, "A diamond is forever." And here's the first ad with the "Diamond is Forever" slogan, and here's a later one from the 1960s. She actually never had a diamond engagement ring, as she never married. Another big break came in 1953 with the movie Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and where Marilyn Monroe sang "Diamonds are a girl's best friend." Let's see.
And gifts expensive jewels, a kiss of the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. A kiss may be grand, but it won't pay the rental on your humble flat, or help you at the automat. Men grow cold as girls grow old, and we all lose our charms in the end. But square cut or pear shape, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
All the diamonds in the movie were fake. In 1956, 3 years later, Marilyn Monroe converted to Judaism when she married the playwright Arthur Miller. Here's Harry Winston, who was born in New York City in 1896 from a family that came from the Russian Empire. His father had a small jewelry store, but in 1932 he founded Harry Winston Inc. And he made his fortune by acquiring collections of jewelry, redesigning it to a more contemporary style. And he was known as the King of Diamonds, or jeweler to the stars. And at one point, he had about 1/3 of the world's famous diamonds, second only to the British crown. And here's the Hope diamond, which originally is from India. The blue is from traces of boron. It had several owners, including King Louis XIV of France. But Harry Winston had purchased it in 1949, and in 1958 he donated it to the Smithsonian Institute. In 1966, Harry Winston purchased a 240-carat rough diamond, and out of that came a 69-carat pear-shaped diamond. He sold it to Harriet Annenberg Ames, who was sister of Walter Annenberg, a Jewish businessman, philanthropist, and UK ambassador. But she put it up for auction in 1969. And Richard Burton had really wanted it for his wife, but he was outbid by Cartier, who paid $1,050,000. However, the next day, Richard Burton purchased it from Cartier for $1,100,000. And then Elizabeth Taylor had Cartier make a diamond necklace to showcase the diamond, which she wore at the 1970 Academy Awards. Elizabeth Taylor had converted to Judaism in 1959, 1 year after the death of her husband, Mike Todd, in a plane crash. And she was a very strong supporter of Israel throughout her life and of many, many Jewish causes. In 1976, when the couple divorced for the second time, she actually sold the diamond, and some of the proceeds went to building a hospital in Botswana. There are a couple of ways to mine diamonds. One is open pit diamond, and that was used in Siberia, where the Russians found diamonds in the 1950s. But they didn't want to put all their new diamonds on the market because they would lose foreign currency that way as the diamond prices would go down. So communist USSR made a secret deal with De Beers to purchase all their diamonds. Many of the diamonds were very small diamonds, so De Beers came up with the Eternity Ring. And another way of mining for diamonds was underground, through the diamond pipes, using these very large drills. It would take mining 250 tons of rock to get 1 carat of diamonds. And diamonds, after they were pulverized and pulverized again, they would put on these conveyor belts with oil on it, because diamonds would stick to the oil. And also they would be subjected to X-rays, because many diamonds fluoresce under the X-ray light. And humans actually never touched the diamonds in this whole process. Besides Antwerp and New York City, Israel was a big center of diamonds, and again, it owed its existence after World War II to Harry Oppenheimer, who made sure that Israel got enough diamonds. In 1960, the Israel Diamond Center moved to the city of Ramat Gan, to the east of Tel Aviv. And it has one of the world's largest diamond trading complexes. It's known, as I said, everything under one roof: shipping, insurances, banks, post office, synagogues, Beit Midrash, doctor's offices, it's all there. They have one large trading hall for rough diamonds and one for polished diamonds. About 40% of the workers are Orthodox. About 15,000 people work in the business. 25% of the diamonds in New York City, one way or another, came via Ramat Gan. And Israel has one of the most advanced equipment for cutting diamonds and evaluating diamonds. In Israel, in the world, actually, nowadays, it's found that about 20% of diamonds are lab-grown diamonds, which are real diamonds. One way of forming it is by taking a tiny seed of diamond, putting it in an atmosphere of methane gas, which is rich in carbon, and you put it under high heat and pressure, and in a few weeks you have, a large diamond. About 100% of industrial diamonds are now lab-grown. But lab-grown diamonds are very energy intensive. And so one company in Israel called Lucix came up with the idea of having their own solar field to produce energy to make their lab-grown diamonds. And the name Lucix comes from the Beatles song, "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds." But the world of diamonds was changing in the 1970s. In Antwerp, starting then, a religious group from the northwest state of Gujarat in India, the Palanpuri Jains, started buying small diamonds and then would send it to the city of Gujarat to be cut. And they expanded their business, and to the point where nowadays about 75 to 80% of the diamond business in Antwerp is from Indians. Indians, another group from Gujarat, The Katawati Patels have the largest diamond bourse or trading center in the world in Mumbai. Overall, about 850,000 Indians now work in the diamond business, and about 90% of the diamonds in the world are cut in Surat, which is known as Diamond City. Nowadays, about 50 to 60% of diamonds are, 90% of diamonds are actually cut in, 50 to 60% of diamonds traded in New York City are from Indians. The largest retail company dealing with diamonds and gems is Signet Jewelers. The great ancestor of the company is Harriet Wolfe Samuel. She was actually born in London in 1836. In 1863, her husband, Walter Samuel, died. She took over the watchmaking business, but by 1890, she moved into jewelry and started H. Samuel jewelry stores, and there's about 300 now in England. There it is. The company, Signet, has acquired a number of different companies. The most recent was Zales in 2014, but they have companies from Canada, England, and the United States. The common denominator of all these companies, they were started by Jews. These are the ones that were not. But by the second half of the 20th century, De Beers was having a hard time keeping their monopoly because there were new discoveries of diamonds in Russia, in Canada, and Australia. And one of the people who was responsible for breaking their monopoly was here, Lev Avnerovich Leviev, who was born in Samarkand in the USSR, which is now in Uzbekistan. He's an Orthodox Jew, big supporter of Chabad. And he has lived in London and in Israel and in Russia. He's the chairman of Africa Israel Company, which has a great deal of real estate holdings as well as diamonds. Here's his daughter, Shagit Leviev-Sofiev, who's president and CEO of Leviev Group USA, and one of their companies is Leviev Diamonds, the largest privately held diamond firm to control all aspects of the diamond pipeline from mines to market. She's a graduate of Bar-Ilan University. She's fluent in 6 languages and a mother of 4. But by 2000, then, De Beers gave up trying to keep their monopoly. And they started De Beers jewelry stores in 2001, first in London. Now they're all over the world. Their Forever brand, which were beautiful, rare, responsibly sourced diamonds, no blood diamonds, with the lasered icon and numbers on it in 2008. Their synthetic diamond brand, Lightbox, came out in 2018. The Oppenheimers sold out all their shares in 2011, but I wouldn't feel sorry for them because they made $5 billion. There are a few other famous Jews who've been in the diamond business. One was Hans Stern, who left Germany at age 15 in 1937 to escape the Nazis, came to Brazil, learned everything there was about the gem business, and started H. Stern in 1945 in Rio. And now there's over 170 different stores. You've probably seen them in various airports and elsewhere. He died in 2007, and his son Roberto is now CEO. Here's Lawrence Graff, who was born in 1938 in East End of London from immigrant parents. He was apprenticed to the jewelry manufacturing workshops, which were in Hatton Gardens in London in 1952 at age 14. And that was common for the Jews to be apprenticed to the jewelry business at that time. But he was ambitious. In 1960, he opened Graff Diamonds Incorporated. And in 1962, he opened the first retail store in Hatton Gardens, which was very unusual because it was mainly wholesalers there. Now there's over 50 retail jewelry stores in Hatton Gardens. He made his money by selling to the newly rich diamonds, particularly from the Middle East, and he's worth now over $4 billion, and he has 50 retail stores throughout the world. He's sort of the new Harry Winston. In 1922, Max and Clara Fortunoff founded a housewares store, and they eventually had 8 stores in Brooklyn under the L in Livonia Avenue, which I remember going there with my grandmother. In 1964, they moved to Westbury, Long Island, but they went bankrupt in 2008. However, in 1957, they started a jewelry line, which went online in 2010. And now Esther Fortunoff-Green is the owner and president, and she's been on the board of the Board of Jewelers of America. But in the United States, there's probably hundreds or probably thousands of locally owned jewelry stores and dealers in diamonds in the United States. One in Cincinnati is Boris Litwin Custom Jewelers. It was started by Boris in 1913, and he had previously made jewelry for the Tsar and Russian nobility, and his great grandson Andrew runs the business nowadays. Some of you may have known or heard of Don Silverberg, who died in 2016 at age 87. He worked at his parents' jewelry store, Bromley's, but in 1968, he and his wife, Jane, who he married in 1953, opened the first Silverberg Jewelry Company in downtown St. Pete. It's actually where Sundial is today. Eventually, there were other stores in Port Richey, Clearwater, Tampa, and Sarasota. The last store was in Sarasota, run by his son, Ed, but they no longer are in the business. Finally, Maurice Hursty, who died in 1984, he was a longtime member of Congregation Beth Shalom, but he actually lived right here in Dunedin. He had a successful diamond business in Belgium, but he fled to escape the Nazis. He eventually made it to New York City, worked in the Diamond District, but then he worked exclusively for Harry Winston. He ran his Puerto Rico diamond cutting operation, wholesale and retail sales. So that's basically our connection to Jews and diamonds in this immediate area. So hopefully you learned a little bit about the sparkling and multifaceted history of diamonds and Jews. And if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them. Thank you. Anybody? Yeah.
Could you just quickly review the controversy and how the blood diamonds were resolved?
Yeah, Particularly in West Africa and in the Congo, there was lots of fighting various militias, and they would dig up diamonds to finance their militia and all their equipment. But then there's been international agreements not to purchase these type of diamonds, which has been pretty successful, actually. Yeah.
Why are so many Jewish people attracted to diamonds?
One, there were no, starting, say, from the Middle Ages, there were no guilds. Like in Amsterdam, there were no
Eric, can you
guilds.
just repeat the question, because people
Yeah.
can't hear the question.
The question is, why are so many Jews attracted to the diamond business? Well, one reason was, say, in Amsterdam and before then Antwerp, it was a new business, so there were no guilds to keep Jews out of. So it was really an open field that Jews were attracted to. Also, diamonds are very portable. So if Jews were expelled from somewhere or persecuted, they can always take their diamonds and their skills with them. And you can see, like in World War II, Jews moved from Antwerp to set up businesses in Havana, in Tel Aviv, and in New York City. And as you saw later with Maurice Hersty in Puerto Rico, too. So those were the main reasons. They were portable, and there weren't the restrictions like in other fields. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, they tend to cut themselves the higher end diamond, bigger diamonds, and that's why they have the most advanced equipment. But a lot of the smaller diamonds are probably cut in Surat, India, and then sent back to Israel, and then from Israel it goes to New York City. So where those diamonds were probably cut, the bigger ones, more expensive ones, probably in Israel, and the less expensive ones in India. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well. Yeah, basically, if you didn't escape the Nazis in 1940 when they invaded, essentially all the diamond workers who remained in Amsterdam or Antwerp were killed. Only about 5% survived. Yeah. Yeah. They used it for polishing because because diamonds are the hardest natural substances, so the only thing that can cut or polish a diamond is another diamond. So that's why they use the diamond dust. The same in World War II, and even nowadays, diamond dust is used for precise cutting of tooling equipment to cut things because it's the hardest substance, so it can basically cut anything. Yeah, like what would happen with those scapes is they would turn, and the diamond would be held in a little lead container at a certain angle, and the dust would polish it it's called a facet, and would polish it there. And then when they finished that, they would do another facet and another facet. It's kind of tedious work to come up with a diamond. And if you don't do it right, you destroy the whole value of the diamond. Are there a lot of thefts and moving diamonds? Less than you would think, at least, and less, maybe more so now, but less so in the past, because like particularly in New York and in Antwerp, if you were found that you were stealing, you would never get another deal. So for a long time, it didn't happen very often. Apparently nowadays, it's more common. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.